Good evening. We have a disturbing report from the flashpoint of this summer's war between Georgia and Russia, which led to talk of the revival of the Cold War. Georgia, which seeks NATO membership and boasts about its democracy, claimed that Russia planned and launched an attack. Moscow disputes this. Whatever the exact series of events, Newsnight's Tim Hewell is the first Western journalist to secure unfettered access to South Ossetia. He heard eyewitness accounts that Georgian troops engaged in human rights abuses, including shelling a sleeping city and deliberately bombarding undefended apartment blocks. We'll hear the Georgian side in a moment from the president himself. First, here's Tim's exclusive report from South Ossetia and its main town, Skinvali, in a region which some fear could start off World War III.
Just before midnight, one Thursday in early August, a barrage of rockets and shells was unleashed on a small town in the Caucasus Mountains of Georgia. It came from the country's own government, determined to reconquer a rebel stronghold. But the rockets didn't just hit rebels. They hit many ordinary houses, including the one that was Taya Sitnik's home.
This is what used to be our stairwell. We were hiding in the basement down here.
Taya and her son Georgi rushed down here from her upstairs flat in Skinvali when the bombardment started at 11:30 on the night of the 7th of August.
We were watching TV. The firing started not from machine guns, but from heavy artillery. We sat here and thought it would finish, but it got ever stronger. There were loud shell explosions. You couldn't get out onto the street or upstairs. We thought that in the morning it would quieten down, but the firing didn't stop.
On the morning of the second day, a fragment of a tank shell hit her son in the neck. He bled to death in her arms.
This is where my son's blood was. The neighbours have cleared it up now. They wanted to burn us alive in this building.
Mobile phone footage shows the Georgians using notoriously inaccurate Grad rockets and taking their tanks through the streets. This is what the tanks did to Taya's building. Two of them, she says, fired into every floor from just yards away. Her flat, less damaged than many, is now a memorial to her only son. Georgi was just 21.
He was a dentist. Here's his mask. I brought his last photos. I held him in my arms. I closed my son's eyes. How can that be, for a mother to close her own dead son's eyes?
Skinvali, the focus of Georgia's attack, is the size of a small English market town. But it's the capital of a territory, South Ossetia, that broke away from Georgia nearly 20 years ago. Georgia says the Ossetians, backed by their ally Russia, used Skinvali as a base for ever more frequent attacks on surrounding Georgian villages. It says that's why, finally, on August the 7th, it counterattacked. But the opposite Ossetian version of events has barely been heard in the West. I've come to find out what they experienced on August the 7th and the days that followed. Skinvali hasn't been levelled to the ground, as the Russians claimed during the war, but houses that are still standing are often badly damaged inside. What's striking is how much destruction the Georgians inflicted in just a couple of days, and destruction mainly of ordinary homes. For the Ossetians, that constitutes a crime against humanity that the world has closed its eyes to. The world concentrated instead on what happened next, the invasion of South Ossetia and other parts of Georgia by the Ossetians' mighty allies, the Russians. The West was outraged.
There was a tit for tat. I think the Georgian action was reckless. I think the Russian response was disproportionate and wrong. And that is the series of events that have landed us where we are. The rights and the wrongs, both, of each side's actions need to be investigated, but they mustn't occlude the fact that a neighbour with 800,000 people in uniform then invaded a sovereign country that's recognised as part of the United Nations.
In Gori, a Georgian town outside South Ossetia, the Russians occupied what was a brand new military base, newly equipped to NATO standards. The footage ordinary Russian soldiers took on their mobiles reveals their wide-eyed fury at the Georgian enemy's superior conditions.
Охуенные кровати, блядь. Охуенная казарма с этими окнами, блядь. Как мы, блядь.
Russia deliberately trashed this base to weaken Georgia militarily and to punish the country for its growing ties with NATO. And indeed, Georgians believe that it was to accomplish those objectives that Russia started the whole war in the first place. So who was to blame for the outbreak of war? In the Georgian capital, Tbilisi, they say they can prove it was the Russians. And Huel, names are Sturdy and Huel.
Sturdy and Huel.
They're taking me to their top-secret monitoring centre, where evidence collected by this operative is at the heart of the debate. It's the tape of a phone call between two Ossetian border guards, apparently confirming that Russia began the war. One guard reports that a Russian armoured column has passed through the tunnel from Russia onto Georgian sovereign territory. What's crucial is the timing. The Georgians say the call was made at 3:25 a.m., some 20 hours before their attack. In the Georgian Interior Ministry, a senior official played me the recording.
Технико дарма одамдар. Ерен эрж бохос üstüne. Mana 20 minut var. Da bunda çok fazla dünyadron tartı. Omaca bira işte bira tekniko rokoltu. Oy, tonko darcı, bempeta, birden tetta.
But despite this apparent evidence, Georgia didn't mention any Russian invasion when it went to war at the end of that day, the 7th. It didn't mention any proof until weeks later, because it says now it mislaid the tape. So even though this tape was so important as evidence of Russia's actions, you actually lost it for a month?
Well, we never lost it actually because it was in the files. But we had about 6,000 intercepts of the same kind.
But this was crucial.
This was crucial.
So even one so important to your case, you didn't keep it separately?
No, that was a mistake.
Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, isn't convinced.
This tape is nonsense and it is a lie. Look, NATO and the United States, with all the satellites monitoring this area very, very closely, how can they not know the truth? They know it, and we know that they know it.
Russia claims its army first crossed the border at the Rocky Tunnel on August the 8th, the day after the Georgian attack on Tskhinvali. I arrived by the same route, the first Western journalist since the war to be given unrestricted access to South Ossetia. If Georgia were right about the timing, Russian troops would have poured down this road from the 7th of August onwards. But our driver Alan Parastayev, an Ossetian who came this way on the morning of the 8th, says he saw no troops at all.
That's why the panic was in South Ossetia and in Tskhinvali as well. And even some of the authorities said that the Russians betrayed us and they don't want to help us anymore.